Welcome back to something Divinity actually said 2 years ago. I want to show you a video of a few of the law tubers having a fun little debate about due process and the state's burden of proof.
Is it better to let 100 criminals go free than to imprison one innocent man?
What bothers me about this phrase and why it's always been a bit of a pet peeve of mine is because I feel as if some attorneys like Alan Dershowitz quote this as a justification to say that they are wearing a super cape and protecting American society by serving the role they serve in as criminal defense attorneys, and that they're basically protecting the American people from tyranny.
I mean, I would phrase it differently than Dershowitz does. I wouldn't say me getting my clients, evidence excluded because of a bad warrant or whatever the case might be, saves you from getting your car searched. But that is the underlying public policy behind excluding that kind of evidence. My position is more akin to, listen, I'm going to fight like hell for my client and compel the state to prove them guilty beyond a reasonable doubt before they can put my client in a cage, because you want that burden too. And if the guy I'm defending today doesn't have that protection, the people you love and you don't have that level of protection.
Ultimately, I think Dershowitz,
it's not the person's acquittal, the bad guy's acquittal, that's the benefit. It's the process. It's not the outcome. It's the process. The outcome is incidental to the process. If you have good process for the worst of us, you have good process for the best of us. And I care a lot more about the process than I do about the particular outcome in any individual case.
Oh, I'll agree with that one.
Okay.
I would too.
It is more important that the innocent be protected than it is that the guilt be punished. For guilt and crimes are so frequent in this world that they cannot all be punished.
But if innocence itself is brought to the bar and condemned, perhaps to die, then the citizen will say, whether I do good or whether I do evil is immaterial, for innocence itself is no protection. And if such an idea as that were to take hold in the mind of the citizen, that would be the end of security whatsoever.
Sure. If there's no justice in the system, why subject yourself to the authority of the system?
Interesting.
Reads deletes, and they talk about, you listen every night and you hear this feet thump up the stairs and you hope they don't kick in your door.
Because I did look at it as an opportunity for the likes of Dershowitz to put on a cape and say, no. I'm doing a benefit to society because I am stopping tyranny from taking root in the form of our government. And that if I don't get this guy to go free because there was an illegal search of his trunk, tomorrow there'll be an illegal search of your trunk. And I don't buy that. And the reason I don't buy
I think more specifically, he's saying, if I don't get this evidence excluded, the client could still be convicted. I mean, just because you're getting evidence excluded doesn't necessarily preclude. Those are two different things.
So I'll tell you why that bothers me, because I don't think it's any individual case that is keeping the government in check from acting with tyranny. You cannot tell me that if he wins on this motion or if he loses on this motion, it's going to have any impact. This one case will have any impact on the level of tyranny that we're going to feel from our government.
No, but it does. It undermines the aggregate, Joe. To the extent there are exceptions to the rule, then the people who are committing these wrongful acts become incentivized. Yep. They don't care about which particular case it happened.
So these decisions, these one-offs, have massive policy consequences in how police are trained to conduct investigations, to conduct searches, to conduct interrogations. They see one opinion and they change their entire policy around it.
Yeah, and this is how police are trained. If you've ever seen the police training for legal matters, I mean, they like one case is taken in complete isolation from the greater body of the law, and they're taught that this is the magic rule that entitles you to do X, Y, and Z. And that's all they know. I mean, these are just cops. They're not lawyers. They're not legal theorists. They're just police officers, and they follow that training.
But if there was one exception, if there was one exception, I don't think it would change how. It's the overall aggregate of cases that the government keeps losing. That means that even if one time they manage to somehow sneak one by,
the government doesn't lose though, Joe. Most of the time they win. Most of the time they get upheld. Yes, that'd be great if they were getting their ass kicked, but dude, they run the table. Oh, it's
Because
all harmless error.
why is that? Why is that? Because
What?
objectively, 99 times out of 100, when you have this improper evidence at the trial court level, it's being excluded. It's not making it. It's not making it in those cases. Am I wrong? Am I wrong about that? That you tell me. Is it such a common thing? Maybe I'm look. I don't practice criminal defense. You guys tell me. Is it such a common thing for someone to illegally search a trunk?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And it never gets overturned. It never gets overturned. Except for the one exception case. And if you look at Virginia Court of Appeals, Virginia Supreme Court law, the number of cases that get overturned on evidentiary grounds, you're talking 1 out of 10,000. It is amazing the odds that people go up against. And yes, in trial courts, evidence goes in that could 100% and should 100% never be seen by a jury. But the Court of Appeals always says it was harmless error.
Right,
They
harmless
always say
errors.
that.
Right, that's
And
the point I was
Joe-
going to make. It's not just that an error was made, right? The appellate court might concede this evidence was permitted incorrectly, but it's an error that has to matter, that would have made a difference.
Right.
And whether or not it would have made a difference is a human subject call that's being made by the appellate courts. No one knows with any degree of absolute certainty if the jury would have come back with a different verdict but for this error. But they make a judgment call. They say, nope, the verdict would have been the same, still would have been guilty. So while there was error, it was harmless, affirmed.
That we see the countless times that there are screw-ups in the system, and not any one of them is having an impact on how our government is acting. No one case is actually having an impact on how our government is operating.
Okay. Who tells them? Who sets that standard? It's the lawyers that call them on the bullshit. The lawyers that call them on the bullshit are the ones that say what you just did was reckless use of that power. And here's how you did it.
Because who else would do it, right? The legislature can't do it. I mean, not in any way that's practically useful.
And if I don't tell the jury and show them why the government was reckless in using the power, nobody ever stops.
Ultimately, would you agree with me, though, that it's the aggregate of cases which is what's influencing our judiciary rather than any one particular case?
I've got another example. I went to the Supreme Court of Canada on a case called the Queen and GTD. And it was basically an issue as to, so what happened in Canada is they'd say, do you want to talk to a lawyer? And the person would say, yes, I do. And the next question they'd ask is, do you have anything you want to say? And in some provinces, the question was, do you have anything you want to say in answer to the charges? And they're supposed to actually hold off once you say you want to talk to a lawyer, but nobody'd ever litigated this. This case kind of fell in my lap, and I was able to take it to the Supreme Court, and they said, yes, you can't ask the person if they have anything they want to say right after they've said that they want to talk to a lawyer. So the Supreme Court said that is a bad question because you're asking them to essentially provide evidence right after they've said that they want to talk to a lawyer. You have to wait until they talk to a lawyer. I got every police officer notebook in Canada. They directed the officers to Sharpie out that question. And then the next round of notebooks were printed without that question. Every notebook.
Wow.
So, like, that case had and I mean, it Sharpied out one line. So, I mean, in terms of the impact, it's like, okay, it's a big impact, but in a really tiny way. But it really does impact how the police do things because they then realized that they couldn't ask that question. It really changed how they interact with people.
By the way, God bless you, Runkle, for the work you did in changing the country of Canada, for crying out loud. I didn't know that I had someone who was so impactful. It's actually that's a bigger feather in your cap than having 200,000 subs.
It's kind of a minor thing in the sense that it's one line.
Right. But it's very impactful. You know what? You could save people's lives from being wrongfully incriminated. That's a massive impact that can carry for centuries. That's a massive thing you did. That's incredible. Maybe it's better if we don't look at them as being heroes, but just they're doing their job. And maybe I'll give more of a pass on that, given the fact that we do need the aggregate of criminal defense attorneys, such as yourselves, holding their feet to the fire. Otherwise, indeed, if we didn't have any of you guys doing this, in that case, the government would be running roughshod over all of us. And I have the utmost respect for you that you're able to make that change in the Canadian society for however long it has left in its future. But
I'm out of order. You're out of order. This whole podcast is out of order.
Awesome.